1998, a milestone year for NASCAR as the sport celebrated its 50th anniversary. In that time span, it went from racing on the beaches of Daytona to local county dirt tracks, now to major superspeedways. The point of divergence in Sunday Night Lights in 1981 and even bigger changes have happened compared to our regular timeline. The national and even international growth of NASCAR has continued to rise as the 21st century fast approaches. The stars of now have been established, and the stars of tomorrow are taking shape. 1998 wasn't just another season of NASCAR. This one was rather special. Welcome to the 18th season of rewritten racing history. Welcome to Sunday Night Lights 1998. Once again, we start off with the third season of the Kodak IMSA Stock GT Series, where Jeff Brabham enters as the defending champion of the circuit, winning it in a tiebreaker over Willie T. Ribbs. The schedule was also met with a couple of changes, as it expands from 8 races to 9, as Phoenix International Raceway's road course has been added on. Sears Point was also replaced by another California road course in Riverside. Riverside will now serve as the season finale. One big thing to note going into 1998 affects all series except for Iroc. NASCAR has made a slight adjustment where the race winner would receive an extra 10 bonus points towards the championship, giving more of an emphasis on winning. One reason behind this was due to having recent winless champions such as the 1995 and 1997 Busch Series. As for silly season, Sapco Racing has a new driver lineup for Stock GT, as John Andretti joins the team in the number 42, replacing Willie T. Ribbs, and we will explain why later. Meanwhile, Robbie Gordon replaces Jerry Nadeau in the 40. Cranefus Haas has a new driver and sponsor for the number 37, as Chris Neville takes over with Oakwood Homes joining the team. All-American Racers expands to 2 cars for 1998 as they add on the number 96 Siemens Chevrolet of David Donahue. Sean Woodside replaces Dorsey Schroeder in the number 16 for the Dyson Racing team, while Schroeder goes to the number 04 MSI Racing machine. Team Cheever also expands to a second car with the number 52 of Darren Law. Herb Akajanian joins the series with the number 43 of Paul Gentilozzi. And lastly, Rick Ware runs the full schedule with his own team in the number 70 Dunlop Golf Ford. Something to point out is that starting in 1998, lights were installed to Daytona International Speedway. So, starting this season, the Stock GT Series race, as well as the Busch and Cup Summer Race at Daytona, will be held under the lights. Bill Lester started on the pole for the season opener, but Robbie Gordon climbed from 4th to 1st in just a lap and a half. Later in the race, Jeff Brabham was looking to kick off his title defense on the right note as he led after a great pit strategy. However, a late caution occurred with a wreck between Jeff Davis and Brian Simo. Towards the end of the race, one driver that was a favorite for the championship came down with mechanical issues, as Bill Lester had to park it on pit road and finish dead last. A tough start to his season, and now he'll have to really get to work if he wants to win the title. And Brabham was in a battle with a part-time racer, Scott Sharp, but towards the end, they would both run out of fuel. The top 2 positions were then handed over to John Andretti and Robbie Gordon, as Gordon would go on to win the race with Andretti in second, as Sapco Racing gets a 1-2 finish. Jeff Brabham was able to get some revenge in the next race, winning at Sebring, and he continued that momentum into the 3rd race at Portland. He led 2/3 of the race, but with 7 laps to go, Bill Lester made the move on him for the lead, and despite dealing with lap traffic, Bill Lester got his first win of the season after 2 races in a row of having trouble from the pole. In the next race at Lime Rock, Lester did start from the pole, but he had to fight through lap traffic towards the end. Much like Brabham in the race before, it was an exciting battle on the final lap between Robbie Gordon and Bill Lester, even going side by side at one point. But it was Robbie Gordon securing his second win of the season. Bill Lester and John Andretti put on an amazing show for the Canadian crowd in Montreal as they had a fun, clean battle for the lead. Lester took the lead during the pit cycle, but John Andretti was able to chase him down with 8 laps to go to take the lead. However, just a lap later, Andretti went up the track and lost the lead to Lester. After that, Bill Lester went on to win at Montreal for the second time in 3 years. And this time with a car that more belonged in a museum rather than a junkyard. It wasn't all doom and gloom for John Andretti, however, because in the next race at Mid-Ohio, he took the lead early and ran away with it to earn his first and only win of 1998. The Savco drivers were performing well and were in a title fight with Jeff Brabham and Bill Lester. The season would conclude with back-to-back new venues, as the race in Phoenix did not disappoint. Right when the green flag dropped, we had a chaotic sequence going into turn 1, providing a thrilling start. Lester, who had won yet another pole, ran up the track going into turn 1, and this led to a stack-up. It was beneficial to Jeff Brabham as he would lead the first half of the race. However, lap traffic would end up making things wild in the second half, as the lapped car of Rick Ware was blocking Brabham's lead, which was beginning to decimate. This led to the top 7 cars all catching up in a single file line, and Brabham getting physical with the 70 of Ware to try to get past him. Before he could make it work, Bill Lester capitalized on the outside and barely cleared Brabham to steal the lead. He would go on to win a wild race in the desert. Going into the final race of the season at Riverside, Robbie Gordon was tied for the points lead with Jeff Brabham, while John Andretti and Bill Lester were only back by 30 points. It was down to these 4 drivers for the title. Brabham was looking to have an advantage as he started on the pole for the race. However, Bill Lester was able to take the lead quick as Brabham started to fall back. It appeared Brabham's qualifying setup was not going to serve him in the race. Lester dominated up front all throughout the race, but he did need a few things to happen in order for him to secure the championship, including where Brabham was located. Lester was able to dominate the race and gain the maximum amount of points that he could. Final lap for Bill Lester. John Andretti is second, and his biggest threat is Jeff Brabham, who's in third. If things stay the way they do now, it'll end in a tiebreaker. But the good news is, barring any disaster, if Bill Lester can pick up this win, it'll be his 4th win of the season, and the tiebreaker would give him the championship. In a season where he finished dead last in the first race of the season at Daytona, he is now going to end it finishing in first, not only in this race, but for the championship. Checkered flag waves, Bill Lester wins at Riverside, and he will clinch the 1998 IMSA Stock GT Series Championship. What a remarkable run for Bill Lester, and this is one he's going to remember for a long time to come. Because this series is co-sanctioned by IMSA and NASCAR, this makes Bill Lester NASCAR's first ever African-American champion, just as Brabham became their first foreign champion a year ago. This was also a special moment for SS Motorsports, the team ran by Lake Speed and Terry Schoonover, as they earned their first title as co-owners. It was a special moment indeed for both SS and Lester. And with that, here are the winners and the final standings from the 1998 Kodak IMSA Stock GT Series season. And there are your final standings. Second year in a row, we have had a tiebreaker for the championship. Definitely a very exciting series to watch. And who knows what's next for Bill Lester. Moving over to the DuPont Super Sportsman Series, we left off with David Bonnet scoring the 1997 championship for Bobby Allison Racing. Bonnet will be racing elsewhere for 1998 and will not be defending his title, and we will discuss that a little later. As for the schedule, the spring Martinsville race was replaced with Wisconsin International Raceway to add a new region to the schedule. New Hampshire was also added onto the schedule to have it consist of 23 races instead of 22. Moving on to silly season, let's talk about the championship car. David Bonnet moves up to full-time racing in the NASCAR Busch Series, and with that, Bobby Allison picks up Buckshot Jones, who had been driving for his own team. Jones hopes to shine bright with his biggest opportunity yet. With John Nemechek focusing on defending his Busch title and Joe Nemechek trying to improve in the Winston Cup, Nemco Motorsports picks up Stanton Barrett, who also ran with his family team previously. Richard Childress Racing has a new driver as well for 1998, picking up Jay Sauter to pilot the number 31. Joe Gibbs has two full-time teams in the Super Sportsman Series, as J.D. Gibbs will run the full season in the number 17 Chevrolet, while they open a second car in the number 18 for a 17-year-old driver named Casey Atwood, a young, promising driver that looks to be a star in the making. After having an impressive part-time run last season, Kelly Williams will drive full-time for Dale Jarrett's team in the number 32 Home Depot Ford. Staying on the topic of Dale Jarrett's team, his son Jason Jarrett will also run a part-time schedule in the number 33. A few other things to note: Brett Sontag has a new sponsor with the Ronald McDonald House, and other new part-timers include Hank Parker Jr., Lyndon Amick, and Gary Smith. The season opener at Walt Disney World was a two-driver battle between Kerry Earnhardt, who was looking to shine bright this season, and newcomer Kelly Williams. The two went back and forth all throughout the race, but in the end, it was Kelly Williams making a statement and picking up the win. In the next race at Rockingham, another driver looking to make it big in 1998 was Stanton Barrett, who was given his biggest chance yet. Towards the end of the race, he managed to short pit enough to get ahead of several lap cars and hold on for his second career win in the Super Sportsman Series. We saw a first-time winner in the fifth race of the season at I-70 Speedway just outside of Kansas City, and it was Jay Sauter scoring the victory. All while Jason Jarrett finished an impressive fifth place. Sauter would win again just 2 races later at Flemington. Stanton Barrett continued his breakout season as he went on to get the checkered flag at the 8th race of the year at Oswego, and then again 2 races later at Charlotte as he had to hold off Kerry Earnhardt as both drivers made it to the finish on fumes. At the race in South Boston, Jay Sauter and Kelly Williams were leading for most of the race, but neither of them would win the race. Instead, it would be the car that won the championship last season. Buckshot Jones would get around Kelly Williams with 15 laps to go, and he would go on to collect his first career Super Sportsman Series win. A big moment for Buckshot Jones. We weren't done with first-time winners this season, but our next was by a driver who raced all 3 seasons, and he was in a situation where it was make or break. Toby Porter of Rainier Walsh Racing was finally able to break through for his first career win at Colorado. Kelly Williams continued her breakout season as once she took the lead from Jay Sauter, she ran away with it for the win at Myrtle Beach. However, it was also good days for certain drivers like Casey Atwood, who has looked rather solid in his first full season on a higher level. Billy Venturini also had a top 5, and he's been running well, as this is also his first full-time season. Lately, he's outran his equipment, and perhaps he could have an opportunity for a bigger ride. Going back to Toby Porter, he was able to add some icing to the cake at IRP, as he and Buckshot Jones battled for the win. But Jones had to pit with a few laps to go because he was short on fuel. And with that, it was Porter grabbing his second career win, as he would go on to finish 4th in the standings with 2 wins, 12 top 5s, and 19 top 10s. In the final 5 races of the season, 4 of those races were won by Jay Sauter. It was a white-hot finish to the season for him, but he would be 144 points off from the championship, finishing 3rd in the standings. Sauter ended the season with 6 wins, 15 top 5s, and 20 top 10s. Heading into the season finale at the Nashville Fairgrounds, it came down to Kelly Williams and Kerry Earnhardt. Earnhardt had a 93-point lead over Williams. While Kelly Williams started on the pole and ran well all race, it just wasn't enough to clinch the championship. Kerry Earnhardt would go on to win the DuPont Super Sportsman Series Championship for 1998. DEI goes on to take the title for the second time in 3 years, as Earnhardt finished with 4 wins, 18 top 5s, and 21 top 10s. Meanwhile, Williams finished with 6 wins, 14 top 5s, and 19 top 10s. And here are all the winners and the final standings from the 1998 NASCAR DuPont Super Sportsman Series season. While Kerry Earnhardt took home the championship, Kelly Williams and Jay Sauter both had the most wins with 6 apiece. That's about half the season. And there are your standings as Kerry Earnhardt takes home the championship. And impressive performances. Casey Atwood and Billy Venturini, a couple drivers that maybe perhaps could get a ride upgrade in the near future. I guess only time will tell. Moving on now to the Craftsman Super Truck Series, we saw Jeff Bodine win his 2nd championship in a row in what has been a bit of a resurgence for him. Now the question is, can anyone dethrone him? Well, we're about to find out. Moving into schedule changes for the 98 season, with Riverside taking Sears Point's spot on the Stock GT schedule, Sears Point takes Riverside's spot on the Truck Series schedule. It also expands to 23 races, as Charlotte is added towards the end of the season. In terms of silly season, Greg Biffle goes full-time in the series, driving the number 50 Granger Ford for Roush Racing. Spears Motorsports also picks up a new driver in 22-year-old from El Cajon, California, named Jimmy Johnson. Johnson has been racing in off-road trophy trucks and the ASA, and now he is ready to take it to the next level. Paige Jones moves on to the Busch Series, so that leaves the number 94 at Irvin Simo open. That ride goes to Chris Trickle, after racing with Star Nursery for the past couple of seasons. Wynn Resorts also comes on to sponsor. As for Star Nursery's truck, they will scale down to part-time for 1998, as 19-year-old Kurt Busch from Las Vegas will be piloting their truck as well as running in the Southwest Series. Barry Bodine replaces Dave Resendez in Jeff Bodine's number 07 truck. Ken Schrader will be running the full Truck Series season for his own team in the number 52. We'll have more on this later. After struggling for the past few seasons in the Winston Cup, Michael Waltrip decides to move down to the Truck Series, now co-owning a team with his brother Darrell. It will be a 2-truck operation with Michael Waltrip in the number 11 Band-Aid Ford and Joe Ruttman in the number 17 Western Auto Ford, after Ruttman was replaced at Roush Racing. Derek Cope is another driver that moved down to the Truck Series from the Winston Cup, as he will take over the number 60 truck for Addington Racing. Some notable part-timers coming into the scene include Dominic Dobson of Pac West, Randy McDonald of Phelan Motorsports, and Rick McCrae with his family team. Most notably of all the part-timers is a 17-year-old driver who will run a few races at the end of the season. Adam Petty, the next man up in the Petty family. He will drive a number 45 Powerade truck entered under PE2, a team run by Kyle Petty with support from his own team, Sabco Racing. There's one last story to cover in Truck Series for silly season, and it's perhaps the story with the greatest impact. There's a new team entering the series this season, and it'll be owned by Winston Cup star Tim Richmond. Hollywood Motorsports. This single truck team will be run out of Hendrick Motorsports' shop and be a number 46 OnStar truck. Now, why is this truck so important? Richmond's involvement and the number 46 were not coincidences. In 1990, Hendrick and Tim Richmond helped Paramount Pictures create Days of Thunder. Well, thanks to NASCAR's meteoric rise in popularity and the popularity of Tim Richmond and his story, all three parties are collaborating to create a sequel. The film will be called Days of Thunder Homecoming and will feature Cole Trickle making a move down to the Truck Series after losing his Winston Cup ride, where he teams up with Rowdy Burns once again, having reconciled at the end of the first movie. The number 46 truck will race full-time in 1998, with Tim Richmond himself driving it during Winston Cup weekends. As for the rest of the schedule, sprint car star Dave Blaney will pilot the truck in dirt races, while open wheel veteran Eric Norris will run road courses and a few short tracks. Eric Norris is also the son of actor Chuck Norris, connecting another Hollywood star to Hollywood Motorsports. There will be another driver running a paint scheme used for the movie, that being Bob Keselowski, who will run a different paint scheme sponsored by Goodyear at some races. This truck will be driven in the movie by a new character, Jack Barnhart, another young racer from California who becomes rivals with Cole Trickle. Dodge Ram is also investing in Keselowski's truck to give more exposure to their involvement in the film. He could be in for a breakout season, one that is much needed for the new Dodge program. Kicking off the season at Phoenix, it was an exciting one, as Ernie Irvan started on the pole and led the first chunk. Tim Richmond would then take the lead later until having a bad pit stop midway through the race. Derek Cope then began his redemption tour, leading late until the final round of green flag pit stops. Joe Ruttman, in his new ride with the Waltrips, had the lead and it looked like he was well on his way to win. That was until the final lap when a rookie driver showed up to spoil the fun in Jimmy Johnson. Johnson was side by side the entire final lap with Ruttman. Ruttman had Johnson cleared going into 3, but Johnson got back to his inside, but he would be inches short, and Joe Ruttman would go on to win the season opener at Phoenix. What an exciting way to kick off the Craftsman Super Truck Series season for 1998. In the next race at Evergreen, Hendrick Motorsports' truck team looked strong early in the season, as Jack Sprague would pull out a win over Kevin Harvick and Brian Refner. 2 races later at Pikes Peak, Jimmy Johnson did look strong early, but it became a battle between teammates Jack Sprague and Scott Lagasse for the win, as Lagasse would be the one taking home the victory. At the 5th race of the season on the dirt in Knoxville, Iowa, it was an all-but-nine front row, as Jeff and Barry contended for the win side by side. However, the one to overtake them was Brian Refner, as he would get his first win of the season. In the second dirt race of the year, it brought a great moment. Ron Hornaday and Brian Refner battled early on, but some slowdowns on pit road allowed a whole new pack to come up to the front, being led by Bob Keselowski, Michael Waltrip, and Dave Blaney. In the end, the one to pull away was Bob Keselowski, as he would give Dodge their first win in their return to NASCAR, all in the truck being used for the new Days of Thunder sequel. The 10th race of the season provided an incredible race, as Michigan has done so in the past, as the later stage saw a fight between 2 California kids, as Jimmy Johnson and Kevin Harvick battled. Harvick pushed Jimmy to the lead, but took it for himself. But Jimmy managed to take the lead on the backstretch and barely hold on. Another side-by-side finish, but this time it was the first career victory for Jimmy Johnson. Is this the beginning of something special? Just 2 races later, though, Kevin Harvick would prevail as he went on to dominate and win the race at Colorado. Then, just 5 races later, we headed to Charlotte, the race we've all been waiting for. The debut of Adam Petty. And he had a very solid one, starting in 5th and even getting up to 2nd, all while finishing in 8th. Much of the race was a battle between the 50 and 51 as Biffle tried to earn his first career win, but it'd have to wait. Scott Lagasse got held up in the pits late, but instead Biffle had to deal with Tim Richmond, who passed Biffle with 7 laps to go, and Tim Richmond went on for his first win of the season and the first ever for his new Hollywood Motorsports team as well. The last dirt race of the season was a fun one, as it came down to Jimmy Johnson and Barry Bodine. In the end, it was the driver familiar to dirt in a different kind of truck winning the race. Jimmy Johnson would earn his 2nd win of the season and of his career. In the 20th race of the season at Texas World, it was down to the 3 best trucks in the field. Tim Richmond, a truck whacker, Ernie Irvan, a truck whacker, and Adam Petty in just his 3rd start. He was on it and led laps off pit strategy, but then late in the race, he took the lead with 10 laps to go during final pit stops. It was unbelievable. He was holding off Irvan and Richmond, 2 Winston Cup veterans. This kid, who just turned 18 in his 3rd start, he's going toe-to-toe, holding off Winston Cup veterans. However, we take a live look for the last 2 laps, and the question is, can Adam Petty pull off something incredible? 2 laps remain here at Texas World, and 18-year-old Adam Petty is trying to shock the world here today. He's got to hold off 2 of the best from the Winston Cup. He's got 1 more lap to do it. He's been doing this for several laps. White flag is in the air, but Ernie Irvan to the inside of Petty. Here comes Irvan. He's going to get past the 4th generation driver, and Ernie Irvan looks like he's going to steal this one. Adam Petty just needed 1 more lap to hang on. Does he have another chance, though? He gets back behind the 84. He's quickly building up a draft as they head into turns 3 and 4 for the final time. Here they come off turn 4. Petty all over the back of Irvan. He's going to dip down to the inside. He's got a shot here. Coming to the start-finish line, and he's going to be short. Ernie Irvan's going to win this one. Tim Richmond also got into the mix there, but man, what an effort by Adam Petty. He has certainly been very impressive in his first handful of starts. Things can only look up from here for the 4th generation driver. The next race at Gateway, Jimmy Johnson started on the pole and he battled with Jeff Bodine. They had a good fight, but it became a 3-truck race when Greg Biffle caught up to both of them. Behind them late in the race, we had a really big wreck as Adam Petty and Kenny Irwin Jr. collectively spun Cindy Peterson, who hit her teammate Lance Norrick and barrel rolled down the front stretch with others getting involved. Certainly a wild wreck on the front stretch, and here's a view from the stands, and you gotta wonder how many of those fans in the front rows down there may have a camcorder on their hands. Absolutely wild wreck. After the melee, it came down to the 3 best trucks, to which Jeff Bodine pulled away, and the 2-time champion finally earns his first win of 1998, even if going for a 3-peat is almost certainly not in the cards. In the second to last race at Phoenix, Brian Reffner was beginning to pull away with the points lead as his boss and teammate Ernie Irvan started on the pole, but he would quickly lose the lead. Reffner was leading with 10 laps to go as he was looking to already lock up the championship. But Jimmy Johnson, who also ran top 5 all day, caught up to him and got into a close battle with Reffner. They got side by side several times, but Jimmy Johnson finally cleared with 3 to go, and he wanted this win. Jimmy Johnson earns his 3rd win of the season, and in a short amount of time, Johnson is already looking like a promising prospect who's looking to work his way up the ranks. As Ernie Irvan took the checkered flag at the final race of the season at Las Vegas, one driver had already clinched the 1998 Craftsman Super Truck Series Championship. That was Brian Reffner of Irvin Simo Racing, the Rudolph, Wisconsin native. Reffner is a little older than most of the hot prospects, but he has established himself as a winner in the Truck Series. Reffner would finish the season with 3 wins, 10 top 5s, and 17 top 10s. And to wrap up the Truck Series season, here's a look at all the winners and the final standings. Certainly a great year for Brian Reffner. Greg Biffle finished 2nd in the points, winning Rookie of the Year for the Craftsman Super Truck Series. Impressive seasons out of young drivers like Harvick and Jimmy Johnson as well. And still, looks like the Dodge camp still has a lot of work to do outside of Bob Keselowski picking up his first win. We now take a look at the 4-race Iroc season for 1998, and here's a list of the drivers who will be competing for the International Race of Champions. One notable driver to talk about in this lineup is Glenn Seton, who appeared in the International All-Star as well as the 1996 International Exhibition at Calder Park. Steve Kinzer, a decorated World of Outlaws driver, will also be competing in Iroc this year. They will be competing against the best racers in the world. The 4-race schedule consists of Daytona, then once again a trip to Calder Park for a showdown in the land down under. After that, they head to Michigan and wrap things up at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. The first race at Daytona was exciting with lots of unpredictability. Tony Stewart had the lead coming to the white flag, but he was under fire from Al Unser Jr. Unser would take the lead from Stewart, and he would go on to win at Daytona with John Nemechek in 2nd and Sterling Marlin in 3rd. On to the next race at Calder Park, where Tony Stewart started from the pole and led for the first 20 laps. After that, Rusty Wallace would take the lead from Stewart. Despite Sterling Marlin attempting to chase his Cup Series teammate down, Rusty was just a little faster. On the final lap, Marlin made an attempt in turns 3 and 4, but couldn't complete the pass, and the 4-time champion would pick up the win in the land down under. Michigan once again put on another exciting race as Rob Moroso would hold off Jeff Gordon and Glenn Seton for the win. Moroso would head into the final race with a 3-point lead over Rusty Wallace. Sterling Marlin was also close behind, just back by 6 points. For the first time, Iroc was racing at the Brickyard, and it would be a long green flag race, where pit stops were key towards who was winning the Iroc Championship. It was mainly a battle between the Penske teammates of Rusty Wallace and Sterling Marlin. On the final set of pit stops, Sterling Marlin pitted before Wallace, and because of this, it would take him to victory lane. While Rob Moroso was towards the front, he never got a shot at Wallace or Marlin, and because of this, the Iroc champion for 1998 was Sterling Marlin. Marlin wins the title over Rusty Wallace by just 3 points, in what has been a massive resurgence for Sterling Marlin. And with that, here are the winners and the final standings from the International Race of Champions for 1998. Sterling Marlin is now an Iroc champion, but now the question is, can he become a Winston Cup champion? Before we head over to the NASCAR Busch Series, there are a couple of tracks I want to talk about: North Wilkesboro and Atlanta Motor Speedway. You've probably noticed they look a little different this year. As NASCAR grows, its tracks and their facilities are changing, especially thanks to Bruton Smith of Speedway Motorsports. Bristol went through renovations to look like a coliseum, and now he turned his attention to help upgrade two tracks. North Wilkesboro, which became part of SMI in 1996, stays alive and will for the foreseeable future, and gets its own facelift different from Bristol. Over the off-season, Bruton completely rebuilt the grandstands, increasing capacity to roughly 75,000. SMI hopes to turn the track into a mecca of grassroots racing, keeping North Wilkesboro's classic design but rebuilding it on a larger scale. As part of its reintroduction, the track received a minor rebrand under SMI, becoming North Wilkesboro Motor Speedway. As for Atlanta Motor Speedway, the track was repaved during 1997 amidst a renovation for 1998. Originally, they had discussed a quad oval design to match Charlotte, but ultimately decided to keep the original configuration, largely in part to the prestige AMS holds as the host of the season finale, as well as the International All-Star in 1996. The facilities and seating capacity got a major overhaul over the offseason, with Bruton Smith aiming to make Atlanta the world's first motorsport stadium. The track now seats over 150,000 and looks to continue to host the season finale moving forward. Bruton said, quote, "We start the season with our own version of the Super Bowl. With everything we're investing into Atlanta, we want it to end with a second Super Bowl too." Now, because these two tracks are modified, they will not be available for download, and full credit goes to the original owners of these two tracks, and I will show them on the screen here. They're purposely made for Sunday Night Lights videos to add to the story. I will provide links to the original tracks down in the description. I also can share some of the assets we used to customize the track to those who have a use for them. And now, without further ado, let's move on to the NASCAR Busch Series, where John Nemechek is looking to defend his 1997 championship, and not only that, but also earn his first career Busch Series win. Lots of changes came to the lineup for the Busch Series, but before we do that, here's a look at the schedule for 1998. The most notable addition is a one-off event that will be run in the fall. As part of NASCAR's 50th anniversary celebration, they wanted to host a Busch Series race at one of the tracks remaining from the early years of NASCAR. They ultimately selected Winchester Speedway, an Indiana short track that last hosted NASCAR in 1950. The track is a staple of the ARCA schedule, but NASCAR will make a return through a one-off Busch Series points race. As previously mentioned, the lineup had a huge shakeup for 1998, so let's take a look. Sam Art has a new driver and sponsor for his number 00 Pontiac, Dave Blaney, dirt track ace from Ohio, who was also seen in the Truck Series driving for Hollywood Motorsports, will take over the ride as Jimmy Spencer returns to the Winston Cup. Amoco will serve as the sponsor. Kenny Brack goes full-time in the Busch Series with Morgan McClure Motorsports. He continues to build and develop as a stock car driver. He will also run a part-time Cup schedule once again. Roger Penske grows the Busch Series team, and because of this, you may have noticed that they shuttered their Super Sportsman Series program. Blaze Alexander will be piloting the number 2 Mobil 1 Ford, as he is one of the many rookies this season. That can also be said for Matt Kenseth, who will be driving the number 22 Miller Lite Ford. Roush Racing picks up Johnny Benson and Shell to take over their new number 9 Ford Taurus. Bobby Allison Racing announced the closing of their Winston Cup program, and with that, they are going to focus more on being a Busch Series team. After winning the Super Sportsman Championship, David Bonnet moves up to the Busch Series, driving the number 12 Maiden Tail Pontiac. Clifford Allison moves down with his father to the Busch Series to find his footing. He drives the number 84 Lycos Pontiac. DEI has 2 full-time cars for 1998, with Dale Earnhardt Jr. driving the number 3 Chevrolet and the number 14 being piloted by Tony Stewart. This will be Stewart's first full season in NASCAR. A third car will be shared between Kelly Earnhardt, Kerry Earnhardt, Steve Park, and Ron Fellows with the number 19. Bill Davis Racing expands to a full-time team in the Busch Series, adding Paige Jones from the Truck Series, taking Circuit City sponsorship with him. Jones will drive the number 23. They will also field a second part-time car for Jeff Gordon to drive select races and Ricky Johnson to drive on the road courses. Richard Childress Racing brings Mike Skinner up from the Super Sportsman Series to drive the number 31 Chevrolet. As for Dale Jarrett's team, there is one more additional detail that needs to be discussed. Dale Jarrett goes back to full-time Cup racing with his own team to help build the program for the future. Jarrett's team also has a new co-owner in NFL superstar quarterback Brett Favre. The team, including what you saw earlier in the Super Sportsman Series, is now known as Jarrett Favre Motorsports. With that being said, the team picks up Tim Steele, coming off a great part-time run last season, as well as capturing his third ARCA championship. ARCA runs on many of the tracks that NASCAR does. So, can Tim Steele use that to his advantage? The team will also run a part-time car later in the season for Kelly Williams, driving the number 82. David Green moves back down to the Busch Series, taking over the number 36 for Team 34. Jerry Nadeau replaces Hutch Strickland in the Sapco Racing number 40, as he's looking to impress many after running the last 2 seasons in the Stock GT Series. Bobby Labonte is another driver to move back down to the Busch Series. He will be in the number 44 for Labonte Motorsports with Nokia as a sponsor. Another team that has a lot of hype going into the season is Washington Irving Motorsports. The team will carry the number 50 in the Busch Series as they run the full season with Willie T. Ribbs as the driver. Snyder's Pretzels will sponsor the car. The team will also run select Cup races, and we will discuss that later. Bud Moore does run a Busch Series team full-time for this season, picking up Tommy Kendall, who has been impressing a lot lately with his solid performances across Stock GT, Iroc, and his Busch Series win last season at the Daytona Road Course. Ricky Craven moves down to the Busch Series to drive for ST Motorsports. Hutch Strickland moves to the number 61 for Richie Evans and B.R. DeWitt, as Rick Mass moves back up to the Winston Cup. Lastly, Adam Petty will make a few Busch Series starts towards the end of the season for Rainier Walsh Racing. It's safe to say that the Busch Series is stacked this season, and there will be tons of competition. In the closing laps of the Napa Auto Parts 300, Tim Steele took the lead, coming to 8 laps to go, and he had to go to work to hold off many contenders. Steele had one of the best cars in the field, but he had to hold off the likes of Mike Skinner, Paige Jones, and even Glenn Allen Jr. looking to pull off the upset. Off turn 4, here they come. White flag, final lap here at Daytona for Tim Steele. Coming off of an ARCA championship, now trying to show the world what he's made of, and also give a good start to Jarrett Favre Motorsports, the team owned by Dale Jarrett and Packers quarterback Brett Favre. Mike Skinner all over the back of Steele, however. Paige Jones sits there in third as we go on board with the 31 of Skinner. Tim Steele's got to make his car 5 lanes wide, but it might be too late. Here comes Skinner to the inside. Skinner is going to get past Steele here, and Steele is just going to be short as Mike Skinner pulls away, coming off turn 4. Checkered flag waves, and Richard Childress Racing's Mike Skinner is going to win at Daytona. What a big win for the driver, moving up from the Super Sportsman Series. Paige Jones just got Tim Steele at the line, and a tough break for Tim Steele, who came so close to his second career Busch Series win. But I have a feeling we're going to hear more from him, as well as potentially the winner we see here, Mike Skinner. Moving on to Rockingham in the very next race, much of it was a battle between bushwhacking Kelly Earnhardt and rookie Paige Jones. But Jones pulled ahead after pushing Kelly up the track. A late yellow came out for Hut Strickland, and this would end up bunching up the field, leaving Jerry Nadeau, Kelly Earnhardt, and Tim Steele in position to fight for the lead. Nadeau quickly made his way around Jones and took advantage of the battle behind to pull away. The 28-year-old gets his first Busch Series win, likely the first of many first-time winners this year with how stacked this roster is. Just 2 races later at Louisiana, it was a wild race with quite a few wrecks and lots of lap traffic to deal with. At one point, Tim Steele and Jeremy Mayfield were battling for the win and nearly got caught up in a wreck involving Mike Wallace, Kenny Brack, and John Nemechek. However, after the heartbreak from Daytona, Tim Steele was able to hold off Mayfield and Tammy Jo Kirk for the second win of his career and his first of 1998. 2 races later at Hickory, we had some beef in the back of the pack. We had a yellow for Willie T. Ribbs spinning off Tony Stewart while being lapsed down and collecting Dave Blaney in the process. But just a few laps back under green, Blaney wrecked Ribbs right back. The two definitely were not happy with each other, but at the end of the night, it was Matt Kenseth holding off Dale Jr. and John Nemechek for his first career Busch Series win. Willie T. Ribbs stayed out while other leaders elected to pit during the final caution at Charlotte. Ribbs was leading in the final 10 laps, and the biggest question was regarding whether he could make it on fuel or not. Then, with 3 laps to go, Jeff Gordon came knocking on his door and was all over the back of Ribbs' car. Then, coming to the white flag, Gordon and Ribbs were side by side with everyone at the track on their feet. However, Ribbs was able to push ahead, and Willie T. Ribbs would go on to earn his first career Busch Series win and the first win for Washington Irving Motorsports. What a huge moment for this team, as Jeff Gordon commented afterwards that he congratulated Ribbs and said he absolutely earned it. Heading into the summer months at the Daytona Road Course, Paige Jones started on the pole and he battled his teammate and Truck Series driver Ricky Johnson. They battled for most of the early stages, but after the second round of stops, Jones got out to a big lead and pulled away. You probably wouldn't expect it on a road course, but Paige Jones gets his first career win at Daytona and earns a Bill Davis Racing 1-2 with Ricky Johnson finishing in second. Just 2 laps into the race at New Hampshire, we had a massive pileup on the backstretch involving several cars, as you see Ricky Craven getting some airtime as well as Jason Keller in the 57. Everybody walked out okay, but still, it was a wild wreck involving several cars that would certainly shake up this one. With the restart with 2 laps to go, it looked like John Nemechek was finally on his way to his first career Busch Series victory. However, we do have an NR 2003 moment as he and other leaders had to go down pit road coming to the white flag, and this ended up handing the win over to Dale Earnhardt Jr. Massive heartbreak for John Nemechek. At Michigan, it was a 4-car breakaway in the end, with Blaze Alexander, hometown hero Tim Steele, Jerry Nadeau, and Patty Moyes battling for the win. Alexander got hooked a bit and slowed down behind a lapper on the final lap, but then Jerry Nadeau went low on Steele, and with a push from his teammate Patty Moyes, Nadeau got past in turn 4 and held on to earn his already 5th win of 1998. Nadeau is absolutely on a roll. If there was one word to describe the Bristol night race this year, it would be finally. John Nemechek has had one of the strangest careers in NASCAR history so far, winning a championship without a single career win, and it looking like it could happen again. But at Bristol, he finally put those woes to rest with Dale Shaw wrecking behind him at the line. John Nemechek, the defending series champion, finally earned his first Busch Series race win. The younger Nemechek has proven he's not just consistent, he can win races and even dominate them. Dale Earnhardt Jr. dominated for most of the race at North Wilkesboro, but he eventually ran into a ton of lap cars in the closing laps. This led to Tony Stewart and Jerry Nadeau catching up to Dale Jr. Tony Stewart took the lead, but with a few laps to go, Stewart went up the track and Nadeau slipped past him. Jerry Nadeau went on to earn his 6th win of 1998. A race to celebrate the 50th anniversary of NASCAR at a track that the Cup Series raced at many years ago. Time for the stars of the future to take on a high-banked but timeless short track at Winchester Speedway. Blaze Alexander started on the pole and stayed out in front for most of the race. The top 6 of Alexander, Nemechek, Dale Jr., Stewart, Steele, and Kenny Brack were the ones in contention all race. Steele led for a bit before green flag pit stops, and during the sequence, Dale Jr. was on pit road for a long time with an issue, and it took him out of contention and the points lead at the time. John Nemechek tried to chase down Blaze Alexander, but he ran out of time. This was the first career win for Blaze Alexander. The second to last race of the season at Atlanta provided the most wild finish of the season, as the last round of pit stops came with only 6 laps to go, and while Jeff Gordon and Tony Stewart battled for the lead, it was suddenly Blaze Alexander up in front with a 2-second lead after the pit cycle. But then, Alexander started slowing suddenly, coming to 2 laps to go. And Jeff Gordon was trying to make a pass on the inside. He hits Alexander, and the two wrecked up the track in turn 1. Out of nowhere, John Nemechek and Matt Kenseth got around them before a massive crash started as they slid down the banking. John Nemechek would beat Matt Kenseth to take the white flag and yellow flag together, and Nemechek comes out of nowhere for his 3rd win of the year and his career. Once you get that first win, the rest will follow. Heading into the final race of the season at Homestead, the championship was already clinched. Dale Earnhardt Jr. went on to win once again, but the title wasn't meant to be. Instead, it was his rival, Tim Steele, having already been crowned the 1998 NASCAR Busch Series champion. Tim Steele would finish off the season with 4 wins, 21 top 5s, and 25 top 10s, as he won the title over Dale Earnhardt Jr. by 168 points. John Nemechek would finish 3rd in the standings, but the biggest thing for him was finally finding victory lane, not once, but 3 times in the second half of the season. And as for Steele, he proved that his experience running larger tracks through ARCA would serve him well. His championship isn't a knock on the young talent in the field, rather an indication of what they could become with their own experience. Steele is showing he's ready for the big time. And with that, here are the list of winners and the final standings from the 1998 NASCAR Busch Series season. Jerry Nadeau had an impressive 8 wins, while Dale Earnhardt Jr. picked up 6 and Tim Steele picked up 4 wins. And there are your final standings, as Tim Steele becomes a Busch Series champion. Not only did Tim Steele win the championship, he also clinched the Rookie of the Year, beating out all of the other promising prospects for this season. And lastly, it's time to take a look at the 1998 NASCAR Winston Cup Series. Rusty Wallace dominated in 1997 for his 4th Winston Cup championship and is looking for his 5th this season. The only new track on the schedule is the addition of Las Vegas Motor Speedway, which the Winston Cup will have as the 3rd race of the season, as well as the 1998 Winston All-Star Race. The international exhibition will return to Japan, but it will be held at the Twin Ring Motegi Oval instead of Suzuka. The only other change is that Louisiana Motor Speedway, the host of last year's All-Star Race, moves its points race back to April. Moving on now to silly season, no roster changes came for the title contenders, but we had plenty of changes in the middle of the pack. Before that though, there's one point to be made about some of the sport's top teams. NASCAR and some of its top teams are partnering with one of the biggest brands in America, Nike. Nike has a new marketing and merchandising partnership centered around some of the Winston Cup's most notable teams: Childress and DEI, Sapco, AK Racing, Bill Davis, and the new Jarrett Favre team. Teams in this program will have exclusive equipment for drivers and crew members and also have a unique decal placement, the Nike swoosh appearing on part of the spoiler. The deal marks another all-time high for the influence of NASCAR stars. Dale Earnhardt had to say, quote, "Being part of creating this program shows what I've known my whole life, that I'm a damn good driver, and so is everyone else in this sport. The fans are going to love getting their hands on these, and those that aren't fans won't be saying, 'Who's that?' about me and my daughter for much longer." Along with the creation of the Coca-Cola Racing family, just like our own timeline, NASCAR drivers are about to appear in more places than before. Now, let's get on to silly season and everything that's changed for the rest of the field. The biggest story of the season centers around the Allisons and their team. After struggling throughout the mid-90s, Bobby, Davey, and Clifford all needed a bit of a reset. As you saw, the team raced 2 full-time cars in the Busch Series, including Clifford Allison moving down to drive 1. Davey Allison, on the other hand, needed a new home. With his father's blessing, he moves over to SS Motorsports to replace a retired Lake Speed in the number 85. That team has a sponsor as well in Motorola. Bobby Allison Motorsports will not race in the Winston Cup Series this season, but Bobby hasn't ruled out a potential return one day with enough manufacturer support. As we discussed earlier, Dale Jarrett begins building his Cup Series program for the future with the brand new Jarrett Favre Motorsports. Jarrett will run the full season in the Winston Cup, his first since being released by Joe Gibbs Racing. Eddie Bierschwell moves into the Wood Brothers 21, a team looking for stability after an abysmal season with Bobby Labonte. The Stavola brothers sell their team, ending a turbulent run for the team that still came with plenty of highlights. Casey Elliott goes full-time racing in the Winston Cup in a second car for what was Elliott Melling Racing, now became Elliott Melling Marino Racing, as another NFL star in Dan Marino now has a stake with the team. As he finally goes full-time, Pepsi comes over to sponsor the younger Elliott, with their brands on the car rotating throughout the year. He's the favorite for Rookie of the Year, but he's not uncontested. Team Tabasco makes their debut in the Winston Cup with Todd Bodine, who will be running his own rookie campaign, driving the number 35 Pontiac. Rick Mast returns to the Winston Cup, driving for Jasper Racing in the number 77 as Michael Waltrip moved down to the Truck Series. Jimmy Spencer is also back in the Winston Cup, driving the 98 for Cale Yarborough. Washington Irving Motorsports will run a handful of Winston Cup races in a number 60 car with equipment loaned from Roush Racing. The two-time truck champion Jeff Bodine will race this car at the Daytona 500 and some other races. Their Busch driver, Willie T. Ribbs, will run 3 road courses plus the Brickyard 400. Lastly, there's one more big story, and it involves Tim Richmond. His number will change to the number 50 for 1998 to celebrate the 50th anniversary of NASCAR. And he will have an all-new paint scheme that will be used in Days of Thunder Homecoming. At the same time, at the age of 43, Tim Richmond announced that 1998 will be his final full-time season in the Winston Cup Series. That said, he will be on track quite a lot even after this season. Remember how Tim Richmond just formed Hollywood Motorsports in the Craftsman Super Truck Series? Richmond announced that in 1999, he plans to race full-time in the series for his own team. Richmond stated, quote, "I like to do things differently and have fun along the way. I know I'm past the point of winning a Winston Cup championship, but I think I can run for the title in the truck and mentor some young drivers while doing so. I'm so excited for Rick to help me end my racing career with a bang over the next few years. And even after I'm done driving, I plan to be at the track as an owner for a long time." With Richmond being renumbered to number 50 this season, Hendrick's part-time car inherits the 51 number, where it will be driven part-time by defending Busch Series champion John Nemechek. Burger King moves up alongside John, and this car will also be featured as Cole Trickle and Rowdy Burns' new car in the movie. Ari Leidendijk will also drive this car in the Brickyard 400. Junie Dunleavy scales his team down to a part-time basis, as Morgan Shepherd will drive select races with the team, and Jeff Brabham will run the road courses. DEI will run a second car for a handful of races, as Tony Stewart, Dale Earnhardt Jr., and Steve Park will each get their first opportunities in a Winston Cup car driving the number 8 Wrangler Chevrolet. Mark Thompson continues to run with the 75 team on a part-time schedule, while Ricky Johnson will run the road courses with this team. The 1998 Daytona 500 marks the 40th running of the Great American Race, as well as the kickoff to celebrate NASCAR's 50th anniversary. It was a highly anticipated race that had no clear favorite to win. 53 drivers attempted to qualify for the Great American Race, with 3 very notable drivers who did not make the field. This included Robert Presley, who started the race from the pole a year ago, Lynn St. James in her one of 2 Cup attempts this season, as she will be driving for Roush Racing in the number 99 for those 2 races. With the ongoing female movement, St. James wanted to be a part of it and get an opportunity to run in the Great American Race. Even though she didn't make the Daytona 500, she did make the Brickyard 400, which we will talk about later. And lastly, there was rookie Casey Elliott. He had an abysmal qualifying run and struggled with the setup in his dual race. Elliott would be on Bill Elliott's pit box, gathering information to help improve his team. With all that out of the way, Sterling Marlin and Jeff Gordon lead the field to the start of the 1998 Daytona 500. Here are the first 2 laps. Here we go, and the green flag is out at the 40th running of the Great American Race. Marlin and Gordon stay side by side as they come off turn 2. So far, so good. A picture-perfect start to this 50th season of NASCAR Cup Series racing. All 42 drivers trying to chase a dream and become a Daytona 500 winner and etch their name in the history books. You see Kelly Earnhardt there. She did it a year ago. Can she pull it off again? Could it be a repeat winner? Could it be somebody new? Sterling Marlin looks strong so far. He's going to clear for the lead, but he's under pressure from Darrell Waltrip in the 6. Waltrip, of course, he won this race back in 1985, and he would love to do it again, especially with him in the twilight of his career. Darrell Waltrip side by side with Sterling Marlin as they roar down the backstretch here on lap 2. Then it's Kelly Earnhardt and Jeff Gordon side by side. Morgan Shepherd up there in the mix with Rob Moroso. So much racing to go and so many passes will be made. I cannot begin to tell you who could be a favorite to win this race as Darrell Waltrip takes the lead. Of course, you lead a lap, you get those 5 bonus points. 3 laps in, and much more excitement is to come here at the Daytona 500. Ten laps in, and Alan Kulwicki had the lead, but the Sapco Pontiac showed up ready to play as Kyle Petty took the lead down the backstretch with help from teammate Patty Moyes. Can Kyle Petty join his father and grandfather as a Daytona 500 winner? Just 4 laps later, Alan Kulwicki would fight back, and he would prove to everyone that he had the car to win today. He took the lead from Kyle Petty coming off turn 4. The lead was looking like a game of musical chairs as Jeff Green had the lead on lap 24, but here comes Tim Richmond to the inside, and Richmond takes the lead. In his final full-time season, Tim Richmond is trying to finally win the Great American Race. Reaching the halfway point as it was a rematch from the 1996 championship battle between Rob Moroso and Bubba Nissen, as Moroso took the lead, but several others behind him were just as hungry as Moroso was as the lead continued to constantly change. After green flag pit stops, Rusty Wallace, the defending champion, was now leading the Daytona 500 with Alan Kulwicki right behind him in second and Mark Thompson in third. Tammy Jo Kirk was leading another pack of cars as this would only make everything more interesting. Alan Kulwicki was leading with 20 laps to go, but the 1987 Daytona 500 champion Bill Elliott was trying to snap a winless drought that dated back to the Bristol night race in 1996. Not only that, but Jeff Bodine, the 1986 winner, was in position to give Washington Irving a major win in their first Winston Cup race. Around that same time, Bubba Nissen was 22nd and suddenly dipped down to the apron. He was down on power and had to limp his car back to pit road. He would lose 5 laps and be taken out of contention to win. With 10 laps to go, Tammy Jo Kirk was leading with Alan Kulwicki and Rusty Wallace behind her. Could Kirk become the next female Daytona 500 champion? Well, it's hard to say, because down the backstretch, Wallace and Kulwicki would make it 3 wide, and Rusty Wallace would take the lead. The 4-time champion looking to add a Daytona 500 win to his racing resume. Here are the final 4 laps of the 1998 Daytona 500, as this finish was an exciting one and one to remember for many years to come. On board with Terry Labonte in the 17. He came very close in 1986 to winning this one, but look to his inside, that's Alan Kulwicki. AK Racing running 1-2 late in the Daytona 500. Will Kulwicki fend off the field and help his driver win, or will Kulwicki win it for himself? You know what they say, in the late stages at Daytona, it's every driver for themselves. And I'm pretty sure that's what Irvin and Kulwicki are thinking. You see Terry Labonte in the mix, and how about Bill Elliott, the 1987 Daytona 500 winner? Another former 500 winner now. You see Bubba Nissen in the 59, had some mechanical issues earlier, and now he could get lapped here right at the tail end of this race. Will he play a factor Will somebody use that 59 car to his advantage as Ernie Irvan continues to lead? And to the inside, Elliott goes to the inside. Kawicki thought about it. Labonte's to the outside. He might lose some ground though. Bill Elliott's going to try and jump up to third. Off turn 4 now. Coming to 2 laps to go here in the Daytona 500. Less than 5 miles left of racing. Looking back from the 11 of Irvan, there's Alan Kawicki. How much would it mean for a guy like him who started his team from next to nothing to win the Great American Race 10 years after getting his first career win? Kawicki to the inside. Does he have help? Is he going to get past Irvan here? Yes, he will. Ernie Irvan has slipped up. His Daytona 500 chances are slipping away. Bill Elliott's following Kawicki. And a driver very much similar to Kawicki, an owner-driver in Bubba Nissen, as Kawicki gets to the inside of Nissen. White flag, final lap of the Daytona 500. This is it. This is what every driver has strived for. Alan Kawicki trying to capture what's going to be the biggest win of his career. His team has been growing so quickly over the last couple of years, and it is showing, but he's got to hold off Bill Elliott down the backstretch and into turn 3 for the final time. Crowd on their feet. Elliott trying to get to Kawicki, but he's not going to be able to. Checkered flag waves. Greenfield, Wisconsin's Alan Kawicki wins the Daytona 500. How about Alan Kawicki, the man once dubbed as the Underbird, always racing with the underdog narrative, but now he is part of immortality. Alan Kawicki is a Daytona 500 champion. It was an incredible fight to the finish, as this win marked a milestone moment in Alan Kawicki's career. He said it was a dream come true. He would perform his famous Polish victory lap that he started doing after his first win a decade ago. Now, at age 43, Kawicki has now etched his name in immortality as a Daytona 500 champion. It also shows how much growth his team has had, with his teammate Ernie Irvan up there in the mix. It's even more special with the fact that Alan Kawicki is an owner-driver that built his team from almost nothing. It's even more ironic as he passed Bubba Nissen, who was 5 laps down with mechanical issues earlier in the race, coming to the white flag. Both have taken different paths as owner-drivers, and it seems that it's only fitting that Kawicki got some help from Nissen, the 1996 Winston Cup champion. Moving on to Rockingham, after a final restart for a spin from Patty Moyes, in which she would later recover to finish 9th, Joe Nemechek battled with Jeff Green, as Green was looking for his second career win. He got around Nemechek and was running away with it out to a 4-second lead with 5 laps to go. But something was wrong. He was starting to lose his lead quick, and at the last possible moment, off of turn 4, he finally stalled a bit, and who else but his teammate Dale Earnhardt to come in and steal it at Rockingham. He only had the lead for the final 2 seconds of the race. He was running top 5 and then stole it. Dale Earnhardt steals the win from his RCR teammate. In the inaugural Winston Cup race at Las Vegas, Alan Kawicki and Kyle Petty were the class of the field, as Petty was dominating from the second half. Kawicki came within a second of Petty, but he would come up short, as Kyle Petty would pick up the win in his first win of 1998. In the 6th race of the season at Louisiana, Sapco Racing had a strong day that almost ended with a 1-2-3 finish, until Sterling Marlin got past Kyle Petty at the end of the race. Ahead of them, Patty Moyes would snap her winless streak, with teammate Shauna Robinson coming home in second. This was the second 1-2 female finish in Winston Cup history, the first having come at Talladega in 1996, when Shauna won and Patty finished second. At Sears Point, Rob Moroso started on the pole and led most of the race. But the lapped car of Rodney Orr allowed multiple other contenders to catch up, including Kyle Petty, Jeff Gordon, and Dale Earnhardt, all of whom were 3 wide for the lead in the hairpin coming to the white flag. While Rodney Orr made things interesting, Petty and Moroso battled side by side. Moroso gave it his all, but Kyle Petty just had a little bit more, and because of that, Kyle Petty continues to run rampant and adds on the trophies. He wins at Sears Point. The All-Star race took place at Las Vegas Motor Speedway as part of a big introduction to NASCAR's Premier Series. As for the Open, John Nemechek, running part-time in the Winston Cup, dominated the Winston Open and would advance to the All-Star race. A fan vote was also held, which was won by Davey Allison. Moving on to the All-Star race itself, Patty Moyes and Joe Nemechek led the field to the green flag as she would lead for the first handful of laps. Then, on lap 5, Ernie Irvan made a charge in turns 3 and 4 to take the lead from Patty Moyes. Irvan would then lead all the way to the end of the first segment. However, after the start of the second segment, Rusty Wallace would then take the lead, and he had a strong car for this race. Wallace almost looked unstoppable for the rest of the race. That was until 3 laps to go when he was suddenly under fire from the number 1 McDonald's Ford of Jeff Gordon. Gordon went to the inside of Wallace, and coming to 2 laps to go, Gordon would take the lead from the 4-time champion, and Jeff Gordon would go on to win the 1998 All-Star race. Oddly enough, this was his only win this season, as he had a solid year, but went winless in terms of points races. Sterling Marlin began to get hot in the summer months as he won not 1, not 2, but 3 races in a row, starting at the Coca-Cola 600, then at Dover, and then at Richmond. Marlin became the first driver to win 3 races in a row since Ken Schrader back in 1989. Rob Moroso and Patty Moyes battled all day at Road America, but pit strategy played a factor, as Moyes had terrible luck with a late yellow for a hard crash by Dale Jarrett. She was sent to the back of the pack of the field thanks to being one of the few cars staying out. Then we had a restart with 3 laps to go, with Moroso holding on to win, as on the restart we had a massive crash on the backside of the course with teammates Joe Nemechek and Ricky Rudd getting turned into the wall, collecting the dominant Patty Moyes and several others. For the first time ever, the Winston Cup Series ran under the lights at the Daytona Road Course on what was a beautiful July summer evening. Rob Moroso likely had the fastest car of the day, but a superior pit strategy would mount Kyle Petty, who slowly climbed through the top 5 all day to the lead. Kyle Petty would go on to win his 3rd race of 1998. In the 19th race of the season at Pocono, it was the turning point for Shauna Robinson, as she put on a clinic and would run away to get the breakthrough win she needed to put her in contention for the Winston Cup Championship. The next race was the Brickyard 400, as Shauna Robinson and Dale Earnhardt led the field to the green flag. However, a big wreck happened coming off turn 2 on the first lap. Marlin, Gordon, and Rudd got together, causing Sterling Marlin to flip, and a few others were collected. There were plenty of passes for position, but Jeff Green was the one dialed in. After the final round of pit stops, Green had to go to work and hold off Rusty Wallace to get his 2nd career win. Rusty came close several times, but Dale Earnhardt kept going side by side with Rusty, which caused Jeff Green to pull away no matter how many times they reeled him in. Dale Earnhardt stole a win from Jeff Green at Rockingham, but it feels like Dale returned the favor, as Jeff Green went on to win the Brickyard 400. a major marquee win for the sophomore driver. Rusty Wallace was once again a threat for the championship, and he reminded everyone of that when he picked up his third win of the season in the Southern 500 at Darlington. He would take the points lead after this race, and at this point, we had 10 races to go to decide the champion. After Rob Moroso took the checkered flag in the 26th race of the season at Richmond, Rusty Wallace had wrecked out early. Why is this important? Well, this allowed for a tight championship battle between Rusty Wallace, Ernie Irvan, Dale Earnhardt, and Shauna Robinson. From here on out, the action only got more intense. At the Fall Charlotte race, the top two in points finished 1-2, with Rusty Wallace getting his 5th win of the year, but Shauna Robinson would take second in the race. And at this point, she had the points lead. But Wallace was still there, as well as Irvan. This battle was far from over. Also of note, Dale Earnhardt Jr. made his Winston Cup debut in this race, finishing in 25th. In the 31st race of the season at Riverside, Ernie Irvan was continuing his redemption tour with a big win. This put him in close distance to the championship. Meanwhile, Tim Richmond would drive a special throwback scheme dating back to the earlier days of his Winston Cup career. Shauna Robinson had a bit of an off day in the second-to-last race at Phoenix, but not a disastrous one, finishing 11th. Rusty Wallace led early but got run down by Kyle Petty and had Jeff Green and Dale Earnhardt catch him on pit strategy. Kyle Petty is out of the title contention because of certain DNFs he's had throughout the season, but he has lit up the charts this season, earning his 7th win of 1998. Wallace finished in 4th, Irvan was 6th, and Robinson, as previously mentioned, was 11th. Going into Atlanta, Shauna Robinson has an advantage, but it's not even close to over. This is it. 34 races, and it led to this, in front of a newly renovated Atlanta Motor Speedway. Over 150,000 people were in attendance to witness something truly special. You have Rusty Wallace, the most dominant driver of the 1990s, eyeing his 5th NASCAR Winston Cup championship. Then you have 39-year-old Ernie Irvan, a driver who's had his ups and downs throughout his career, but since being picked up by Alan Kawicki, it changed his career, and while he is an older veteran of the circuit, it's better late than never, and if things go his way, he could walk out of Atlanta as a Winston Cup champion. Then there's Shauna Robinson, the first woman to win a Busch Series championship, the first woman to win the Daytona 500, and the first woman to win at Indy. Could she become the first woman to win the Winston Cup? If she pulls it off, it would be a major historical moment to cap off the 50th season of NASCAR racing. Going into this race, Shauna Robinson held a 64-point lead over Rusty Wallace and a 71-point lead over Ernie Irvan. With a top 10 finish, Shauna Robinson would clinch the championship, but without one, anything could happen. This is it. 3 drivers, 1 champion. Kyle Petty and Sterling Marlin were on the front row as we take a look at the start of the season finale at Atlanta. And we are underway. 115 laps, 3 drivers, 1 champion. 34 races have led up to this moment as 42 cars roar down the backstretch at what has been called the world's first motorsports stadium. Kyle Petty clears for the lead as Jeff Gordon looks for second from Sterling Marlin as they come off turn 4 to complete lap 1. Kyle Petty led early on with Ernie Irvan second. When the first round of green flag pit stops took place, Shauna Robinson took a little longer on pit road, and because of that, she was shuffled back to 20th. All of this while Ernie Irvan remained in second, and Rusty Wallace was 11th. Did this stop Robinson? Was it over for her? Not at all. She had a fast car, and she knew it. She began to pick off one car after another, and before we knew it, she found herself in 13th, just a few spots behind Rusty Wallace. Ernie Irvan, meanwhile, was still second and hadn't gotten the lead to get those important 5 bonus points. Then on the second round of green flag pit stops, Shauna Robinson had a much better stop with no issues. With the math being done by her crew chief, she was told that if she finished 18th or better, if neither of them led a lap, she could clinch the championship. Nothing is ever guaranteed. She knew she needed to keep pushing forward. And after this cycle, Kyle Petty led, Ernie Irvan was second, Rusty Wallace was 8th, and Shauna Robinson was in 10th. The final round of green flag pit stops took place with 30 laps to go. Kyle Petty made his way down pit road, but Shauna Robinson was told to stay out as long as she could. And it was probably the most important call of this race. Robinson indeed stayed out long enough to lead a lap and earn 5 bonus points, which benefited her points lead. After the cycle, it wasn't Kyle Petty leading. It was Patty Moyes instead, who won the International All-Star here 2 years ago. Kyle Petty was second, Irvan was third, Wallace was 7th, and Shauna Robinson sat in 12th. The race ran green the rest of the way, and barring any disastrous setbacks, it looked like history was about to be made. It has all come down to this. 2 laps remaining as Patty Moyes leads them into turns 3 and 4 and coming to the white. Off turn 4, white flag is in the air for Patty Moyes as she's looking to close out 1998 with a win. But all eyes are on her protege, Shauna Robinson. She just needs to hold her spot as they head into turns 3 and 4. This looks like something that has been a decade in the making, dating back to Moyes' upset win at Michigan back in 1989. Atlanta, you're about to witness history as Patty Moyes takes the checkered flag. Here comes your 1998 champion. Move over, boys. Shauna Robinson is a NASCAR Winston Cup champion. Shauna Robinson has done it. The impossible has become the possible. And now we have a female NASCAR Winston Cup champion. Shauna Robinson is now on top of the stock car racing world. An emotional moment for her and all of Sabco Racing, and how fitting that Patty Moyes would win this race, and the one to win the title was the one who only added on more to this female movement. Shauna Robinson, your 1998 NASCAR Winston Cup champion. We'll get back to their celebrations in just a moment, but first we have one last race to touch on. The impact of Shauna Robinson's championship was heard not just around the US, but around the globe, bringing even more intrigue to NASCAR's final event of the year, their international exhibition, now on the oval at Twin Ring Motegi in Japan. Notable guest drivers to appear in the race include Dale Earnhardt Jr. from the Busch Series, Truck Series champ Brian Refner, and Busch Series champion Tim Steele. Other guests include Winston West drivers such as Butch Gillen, Scott Gaylord, Randy Nelson, Gary Smith, and Brendan Gaughan. Lance Norrick was also entered in the race in the number 60, while Japanese drivers competed in it as well, such as Hideo Fukuyama, Keiichi Tsuchiya, Motohiro Nakagi, and Kazutaro Wakita. Sterling Marlin and Kyle Petty led the field of 30 to the green flag for this 70-lap exhibition. It didn't take too long for there to be a lead change, as coming to lap 6, Jeff Gordon worked his way around the 45 of Patty Moyes, then he went to work on Sterling Marlin. Gordon would clear for the lead going into turn 1. Then 8 laps later on lap 14, Patty Moyes would go side by side with Jeff Gordon down the backstretch, and Patty Moyes would take the lead going into turn 3. Then on lap 28, we had our first round of pit stops under green flag conditions. Some other competitors were running off a different strategy and were hoping for a caution to put them in contention to win. Keiichi Tsuchiya had the lead by 3 seconds over Gary Smith. However, on lap 49, Gary Smith's car would blow up in smoke, bringing out the caution. Then we restarted with 17 laps to go as Tsuchiya was leading with Lance Norris second, Randy Nelson third, Brendan Gong fourth, and Scott Gaylord in fifth. But just a couple laps later, Tsuchiya had to come down pit road and forfeit the lead. Meanwhile, Alan Kulwicki came from out of nowhere to take the lead, and the rest of the way, it was the Daytona 500 champion winning in Japan for a second year in a row. And to wrap up the Winston Cup season, here are all the winners and the final standings. Kyle Petty had the most wins with 7 this season. Rusty Wallace had 5, while Rob Moroso and Sterling Marlin both had 4. The champion, Shauna Robinson, only had 1 win just like her Busch championship, but she led the series in top 5s. And as for the standings, there you have it, your top 10, as Shauna Robinson makes history as the first female Winston Cup champion. Sterling Marlin, despite all those wins, finishing 11th, a tough sophomore year for Kelly Earnhardt, and Casey Elliott winning Rookie of the Year, barely beating Uncle Bill in the standings. The 50th season of NASCAR racing ends with Shauna Robinson becoming the first woman to ever win the Winston Cup. Her rise is emblematic of everything NASCAR is becoming and always has been. Groundbreaking, shameless, and one of a kind. It's a story a decade in the making, with Patty Moyes' 1989 win at Michigan, and then it snowballed with Shauna Robinson's Busch Series campaign, a championship season, and then a Daytona 500 win, and a Brickyard 400 win. Shauna Robinson is a one-of-a-kind megastar. She's become an immortal figure in all of sports. At the Winston Cup Awards banquet in New York City, Shauna Robinson said it herself. There is so much to appreciate about what we do in NASCAR. Every lap counts, and every lap is different. You have to think about grip, how to find the fastest line, passing cars constantly, escaping wrecks, and that's only the beginning. But that's what's fun about all this. NASCAR is unlike anything else. The 90s are a decade seeing the sport truly go nationwide. You have Robinson, Moyes, and Kelly Earnhardt leading a female revolution. But you also have drivers like Jeff Gordon and Rob Moroso, showing young guns from outside the Southeast can still become stars. You have new team owners bringing their own audience to the sport. Penske has a global racing expertise. Alan Kulwicki has a gritty, growth-fueled mindset. Bill Davis has loyalty, team building, and innovation at its core. And Sapco Racing brings with it a diverse, one-of-a-kind flair. NASCAR is built on the backs of thousands of individuals who played their part and push it forward. It's been that way for half a century, and it will for another half century and beyond. You could say 1998 is the culmination of one story the sport has been telling, but when one story ends, another begins. So, what happens next? What superstars are on the rise, especially among the young guns? Who will be the future of the sport? What tracks will be introduced? Who could follow in Shauna Robinson's footsteps? The year 2000 is fast approaching, a year that defined optimism and the arrival of the future for all. What will it mean for NASCAR, and what legacy will it build in the 21st century. The 90s were already an era of NASCAR defined by growth in real life. In this timeline, it's not just grown even quicker, but grown in a way that's incomparable to any other sport. More people than ever are falling in love with the spectacle of stock car racing. That is because the sport has changed. New faces, new sponsors, new ideas, and new leaders. Yet, it hasn't lost its core. It's physical, it's crowded, it's loud. It's one of a kind. It's a rumbling pack of dozens of cars that keep moving forward to bigger and better things. It's how it was in our timeline, and thanks to a bit of creativity and the luck of the draw, it's happening in a whole new way in another timeline. Sunday Night Lights is in its 18th season. It's rewritten over a third of NASCAR's history at this point. It's a celebration of that history, the names we've all known, like Dale Earnhardt, Jeff Gordon, and Rusty Wallace. It's also a celebration of the sport's what-ifs, like Alan Kulwicki, Davey Allison, and Ernie Irvan. And it's also a celebration of those many don't know the stories of: Rob Moroso, Bubba Nissen, and of course, Patty Moyes and Shauna Robinson. There's only one way to see the sport grow, and that's to embrace its change, yet also honor its history. Every single person to ever set foot at a NASCAR race is part of that history, from driver to car owner to crew member to fan. What defines NASCAR? I asked that question when I reintroduced this series through Sunday Night Lights Restart. And over the 4.5 years I've been working on this project, the answer to that question has evolved just as much as the sport. And as this story continues, NASCAR will change in both this timeline and real life. But one thing remains true, both in real and fictional racing. It's not about watching people drive in a circle. It's about people with their own stories, dreams, and legacies that they want to write. And all of them deserve to leave a long-lasting impact. These are the moments that bring people from all walks of life to an event. And it's more than just a race. It's a spectacle. There is so much more to racing than which drivers and teams end up winning and the fans cheering for them. It's about being part of an art form. NASCAR is beautiful. Speed is beautiful. Speed reigns supreme. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Putting this series together so far has been an incredible journey, and I cannot wait to see what happens in 1999 and beyond. But first, please be sure to subscribe and like this video so you can see what happens next as it happens. And share this video with anyone who loves racing and loves creativity. The support you all have had the past few seasons especially has been unreal, and I've loved putting this all together. I do have a few announcements I want to make before we go. First, as I did for 1997, I'll be releasing all the original paint schemes on Stunod right after this video ends, and those links will be in the description. And something that you may have noticed in the Winston Cup section was the amount of alternate paint schemes we created. Well, that's a bit of a half surprise for you all. Myself, Rose Jam, and Jets Racing Designs have been working on a wide array of bonus paint schemes, and we've included over 20 of them in total. Some of them are based on real-life alternates of the time, while some are brand new ideas, and I can't wait for you all to have fun with them. Thank you so much for all the support on this journey so far, and I dedicate those bonus paint schemes to you, the fans. Next, I want to share something really cool that myself and Jets Racing Designs have put together. My merch store is getting an update, and we've created t-shirt designs inspired by all 6 of the Sunday Night Lights 1998 champions. If you guys are interested in that or any general Grace Speed or Sunday Night Lights merch, That link will be in the description as always. Any proceeds help me push this series and my other projects further and further. So, any and all business I'm thankful for. I know this series is a simulation, but I'm making it the cornerstone of my mission to honor and celebrate racing's past, present, and future. And that's it for now. Shauna Robinson is a Winston Cup champion, and it feels like the culmination of everything this series stands for. Even if it's far from over, she's someone new and someone different than anything the world has seen. And I think the real world needs more of that. Whether on the track, in the stands, or just at home and online. For a sport full of tradition, NASCAR has always been built on the backs of people who do things differently. From rural moonshiners escaping from the law to a billion-dollar industry, the world's most distinct and diverse racing series known worldwide. And at the end of the day, the people who push it forward are the ones who create the next generation of it. Let's celebrate everyone who's been a part of this sport as we rewrite racing history, because speed reigns supreme. We can all be part of creating the future of this sport by celebrating the past and present. I'm Gray Speed Productions, and thank you all for watching. Let's make amazing things happen together.